when you say people kind of push back, of course, as soon as you have a big following, that will happen. But um, you take a point of view. You have a take on this stuff, and I think that's super important. Um, a lot of times, people will educate you on something and say, "Hey, let me explain what a tariff is," and you go, "Okay, I understand at an academic level what it is, but I don't understand. I want your point of view. I just think it's how we're used to talking." Anyway, so excited to have you on the podcast. So anyway, I want to talk to you about tariffs. So President Trump came in and very quickly, we're only in 120 days at this point, I think. He came in and said, we have all these unfair tariffs with all of our trading partners. I think really there's only like 18, 19 trading partners that make up like 90 some percent. So it's not worth saying our tariffs with 200 countries. It's only the ones that we're trading with the most. And so he said, we have these unfair tariffs. And I think all of us kind of at a very superficial level say, okay, I know what it is. Our cars get a tariff when they go someplace and their cars get a tariff when they come here. So first off, what is a tariff and what was going on that made the Trump administration decide we need to take action?
Sure. So, I mean, tariffs have a long history in the United States. I do a whole subject on this when I teach my U.S. history course about tariffs. Tariffs are as old as the United States. I mean, we started putting barriers up to protect manufacturing within the United States. And matter of fact, there's some very historic tariffs in the history of the United States. There's the Tariff of Abomination of 1828, which almost led to the secession of South Carolina in 1832. There's an issue that some will argue that part of the Southern Confederacy secession was over tariffs. We have the Smoot-Hawley tariff during the Great Depression that came in. So we have had tariffs for a long time, and tariffs are designed to really protect domestic manufacturing and production. The idea is to make it so that U.S. companies or domestic companies can compete in an international marketplace. And so you would throw these barriers up. They were largely targeted throughout U.S. history at Great Britain because Great Britain was in really the big manufacturer in the world. They also had the ability to transport goods through their massive merchant marine. For most of our history, the British merchant marine made up about half of the world's commercial shipping. Well, post-World War II, we see a substantial change in tariffs. In 1944, you get Bretton Woods, you have all these meetings, and one of the things that comes out is GATT, and that is the decision by the United States to basically remove tariffs. We decided to basically eliminate our tariffs so that foreign countries could ship into the United States with no tariffs whatsoever. And the idea was the United States at the end of World War II is in a dominant position. It is the superpower. We had become the provider for the Allies during World War II. We, transported the arsenal of democracy from the home front to the battlefront. And our merchant marine was, controlled 63% of the world shipping. We were the major manufacturer. We were the major exporter of petroleum, oil in the world. We were in a dominant position. We could have taken the place of Great Britain if we wanted to. We don't. Instead, what we do is we build a military and commercial and political and social alliance with the world, the first world, against the second world, that of Soviet Union and communism and all the issues we didn't like with the totalitarian regime of Stalin, and more importantly, their economic, it's basically socialism, we didn't like. And so we basically eliminated tariffs. And, GATT turned into the World Trade Organization. But what we see in 2025 is a much different world. I mean, we see now the rise of other countries. We see the European Union. We see China. We see Russia coming back up again. And so the idea of Trump's tariffs, I think Trump's tariffs are really interesting to look at because the tariffs are not really, I would argue, economic. I know we always look at the economic aspect, but if you look at the tariff he laid with Canada and Mexico in the very first days of his administration, they had to do over border issues. He has always an objective with his tariffs, and they're usually political in some way. And so the tariffs with Canada and Mexico was over border security. Let's improve border security. Improve the border security, we're going to change things. Over in Europe, it's really trying to get the Europeans to get their defense up. One of the things that President Trump has talked about, especially during his interregnum between the two administrations, was that Europe was overly dependent on Russia for energy. And he said that during his first administration. He was trying to get the European nations to up their NATO
They weren't spending enough on
contributions.
their own military,
Right. They weren't doing their own defense. They were relying on
hoping somebody else would step in.
they were relying on dad. They were relying on dad, the United States, to come to their aid. And what happened is when Russia invades Ukraine and all of a sudden the Europeans say, okay, we're going to cut ourselves off from Russian energy, they realize, holy cow, we're cutting ourselves off from Russian energy and we're really overly dependent on that. And we talked about this just before. All the scenarios I've seen talked about with US and China has been, oh, what if China does this to us? What if China does that to us? Even I've used that. I've sat there and said, what if China slows down the shipment of goods to the United States? Well, President Trump came in and said, listen, we're going to have a showdown with China. Gave everybody warning. We've had 4 months of front loading of cargo from January through April. We've seen record numbers of containers come in. We've seen huge limits, 2.4 million containers just last month coming in. That's the second highest we've ever had come in.